like shit, so I'd been up for 2 hours by the time his call came. Before I was off the mobile phone, I was in my car, speeding through Baltimore's morning rush, a tight feeling in my gut that this was not going to turn out well. Chapter 1. St. Raphael's was an old Catholic hospital, struggling to maintain its independence in the face of overtures, friendly and outright aggressive, from Johns Hopkins and the University of Maryland. It was a third-tier hospital in a city dominated by some of the best medicine in the world. My job was to get this old gal up to snuff. Okay, my job. I am an officer in the Epidemic Intelligence Service, a branch of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. I'm part of the Special Pathogens Branch, which is in the Division of Viral and Rickettsial Diseases, which in turn is part of the National Center for Infectious Diseases, one of the centers in the Centers for Disease C&P. My knowledge doesn't go too much deeper than that. Though I could spit out to you molecular biology of the family Arenaviridae, I couldn't sketch the organizational chart of the CDC. I leave that to the brilliant bureaucrats and technocrats in Georgia and Washington. If there was a Nobel for institutional complexity, these guys would lock it up year after year. I pulled my car into a no-parking zone near the emergency department and slapped the Baltimore City Health Department placard on the dashboard. I fished in the glove compartment and found my old CDC placard and put that out, too. Outbreak or no outbreak, the last thing I wanted to deal with was a towed car. A laser-printed sign was taped to the hospital ward's doors. Isolation area. Contact precautions mandatory. Authorized personnel only. Questions? Call Bioterror Outbreak Preparedness at extension 2134. Thank you. Now, no one's ever accused me of being understated, but I thought introducing a loaded word like bioterror might be a wee bit alarmist. The isolation unit was split into two areas. I was in the first, a small vestibule with 2 sinks, a big red biohazard trash bag, and trays of gowns, goggles, gloves, and shoe covers. 3 opened boxes of half-mask, negative-pressure respirators sat on a rolling cart. The respirators filtered down to 5 microns, about the size of, say, hantavirus. I was glad to see they were sufficiently worried. After suiting up and finding my size respirator, I opened another set of doors at the back of the room. As the door cracked, I could hear a rush of air, felt a suck against the disposable gown. The negative pressure system, pressure greater outside than inside to prevent small particles from being blown into the rest of the hospital, was working. The air would be passed through a filter, then blown outdoors. I made sure the respirator was fast against my face, then I pushed open the door and walked inside. 3 figures, looking like aliens in their protective getup, were talking in the middle of the hallway. Besides the people, there was nothing here but a crash cart, a large biohazard waste can, and a table with a fax machine, paper, and pens. Despite their masks, I recognized the female Dr. Madison and Dr. Verloc, who was black. The third man, an older white guy, I didn't recognize. I stepped up to the group, which made sort of an amoeboid shift to accommodate me. "Antibodies?" Verloc asked, his speech raspy and tinny through the respirator. "Not yet. Nothing specific," Dr. Madison said. "No idea what it is." Finally, the 3 looked at me. Verloc said, "Dr. McCormick, you know Gene Madison. This is Gary Hamill." He pointed at the man I didn't know. "He's the new chief of infectious diseases at St. Raphael's." Ah, the new chief of ID. St. Rafe's had been casting around for someone for months. They must have netted Dr. Hamill in the past few days. Nice of them to tell me. I looked at Hamill. Nothing like diving in head first. "Especially when the pool has no water," he said. We both forced a laugh. "Dr. McCormick is on loan to us from CDC," Verloc explained. "Okay, thanks for the introductions," Gene Madison said, annoyed. Then to me, "Tissue, blood, saliva have all gone to the labs here." "Here?" I asked. "Baltimore City." I looked at Verloc. He said, "Fastest turnaround. We sent samples to the state lab, too." Hamill asked, "What do they have at the city labs?" Verloc looked at the floor. We don't have much, mostly run-of-the-mill. But state is pretty stocked. Tests for the filoviruses, Marburg, and Ebola. I think they have Lassa, Rift Valley, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, Q fever, more. They don't have everything, but they have a lot, actually." "Well, CDC is there if you need us," I said. CDC had resources. modes of analysis, genetic libraries of pathogens that far outstrip those of Baltimore City or Maryland State. We had, in fact, the largest repository of disease-specific tests in the world at our headquarters in Atlanta. We also had the largest repository of actual bugs, not a place to take your kids when they're in the oral stage. Madison spoke quickly. "Thank you, but I think we can handle this here." Gary Hamill said, "Jean, we have access to the state labs," she interrupted. "We don't need to call in the federal government." A word about CDC's relationship with everybody else in medicine and public health. Our jurisdiction is everywhere and nowhere. Really. We intervene only at the request of individual counties and states. If there's no request, CDC stays out of it. And though there are a million reasons why someone would want to ask for help from Atlanta, there are a million reasons why they wouldn't, most of them having to do with control. During my training in Atlanta, they drummed into us over and over again the finer points of dealing with the locals. In general, we try to tread very softly. It's not something I'm particularly good at. In my evaluations over the previous year, professional relations was an area that consistently contained the phrase needs improvement. Hamill looked at me. "Dr. McCormick, we appreciate your offer of support." I nodded. I nod when I'm not exactly sure what to say. Madison sighed. "Well, it looks like we have the lab situation worked out, for the time being anyway. We'll use state." She turned to Verloc. "Baltimore City will head the outbreak investigation?" "Yes," Verloc said. "I already spoke to the commissioner. We'll call state for more hands if we need to. Since Dr. McCormick is already here and familiar with the city, I'm going to ask that he stay on for the investigation." Silence. "I'd be happy to help," I said finally. "I thought we agreed to rely on state," Dr. Madison said. "For the labs, Jean, not for the investigation itself. Dr. McCormick is more familiar with this situation than having CDC involved is going to signal the press he's already here so we can downplay the request. Besides, not having him on board would seem like an oversight." "I want to emphasize," I said, "CDC is here to help at your request. Just as it was with setting up the surveillance program, we can be as much or as little a presence as you want. The investigation and outbreak control will all be locally led, as well as contacts with the press. We'd also be happy to provide you with clinical expertise." There was a long silence, and I knew I had just stepped into it somehow. Jean Madison, the consistently aggrieved, finally blew. "Oh, come off it. Clinical expertise?" I stammered. "I'm merely offering assistance if we should need clinical expertise. I know. Thank God you're there for us." I looked at my shoes covered in light blue paper booties. I sighed. Jean Madison let out a sharp little laugh. "What do you think we do here, Dr. McCormick? We have some of the finest staff in the city to—" "Jean," Dr. Hamill said, "care for these women." "I'm not commenting on the in-house expertise," I began. "Of course you are. You seem to think you're in some backwoods clinic. Surprise, surprise, we have seen our share of sick people, and they do get better. I wanted you to know there are resources available to—" "Thanks for your input, Doctor. We'll take it under advisement." Chapter 2. Helen Jones was more alive than she had been an hour earlier. Alive enough, at least, to talk to me. She was 31, Caucasian, slightly overweight, lucid, mentally handicapped. She was very sweet, very tired, and, now that she was alert, very suspicious of me. In fact, she said, "You are scary." "I hope not." "You are." "Well, even if you think I'm scary, I want to help you. And so I can do that, Helen, you need to help me." "You look like a monster," she objected. "I'm not a monster, I'm a doctor." There was irony in there somewhere. It went like this for 40 minutes. But despite the suspicions and Helen's cognitive limitations, over the course of the interview we were able to establish a few things. Helen lived in a group home for the mentally handicapped, located on the edge of the gentrified neighborhood of Federal Hill. 8 other residents, all female, lived in the home, and all the residents ate their morning and evening meals together and prayed together before each one. She made her lunch each day in the kitchen at the home, always peanut butter and jelly, some carrots, and a Coke. Helen shared a room with Bethany Reginald, who was now in the room next door talking to Herb Verloc. I asked, and Helen said they weren't allowed to have any pets or animals. With other residents, she took the bus to work each morning. She worked in the laundry department of a nursing home outside the city. At the mention of her